Hello, my name is Corey Fullstrike, and welcome to another episode of You're Wrong. You're wrong, Jonathan Pageau. Everything you say in this video is idiotic and made up and stupid and an exact example of why the new Christianity, the revival of Christian doctrine and interest that you and Jordan Peterson and all the other little flies in that particular orbit, it's why you're going to fail. It's why you're going to succumb to the exact same degradation and depravity that all the evangelical churches of the 90s and early 2000s fell to. You're on this same path, you idiot. Let's get into it.
So hello everyone. As most of you noticed, the Olympic opening has created quite a stir. A lot of people reacting online. It seems like everyone is talking about it. For some reason on Facebook, it's like my entire feed was people commenting on the Olympic opening ceremony. To be honest, I did not have the intention of making a video on this, but people close to me that I care about and that I trust have said that it would be a good idea to make a video about it, mostly because, maybe to help people understand what is going on and why things look the way they do. And so here we are. I'm going to talk about the Olympics opening ceremony. The first thing I have to say before I start giving my critique is that it is all very tedious. To me, the whole thing is just, it just makes me want to go to sleep. It's like this super obvious, super boring. Everything is so obvious.
It's so obvious, and yet he's about to get every single aspect of it wrong.
I mean, I understand that it's shocking to some people, but I don't know why people are shocked. People shouldn't be shocked at this point because, basically this is just a continuation of what has been happening for the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, more than that possibly.
2,000 years, 5,000 years. Try 10,000 years, Jonathan, you effing idiot.
And as the image of what has been happening in our culture is becoming more and more obvious and maybe more and more transparent, in some ways I'm happy that more people are noticing, but this is just a continuation of what is going on. And so what are we talking about? Most of you know the Paris Olympics opened up a few days ago, and there are several elements in the opening that were disturbing to some. And the culmination of that disturbance came with a representation of The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, in which was full of drag queens and kind of LGBT icons. And in the middle of the scene, because it was the Last Supper, so obviously it's a meal, and then the meal gets opened up. So this plate comes up to the scene, and the meal gets opened up, and inside is a strange blue man wearing almost nothing, who starts to sing very sensuously and strangely. And
he's wearing a full unitard, by the way.
And everybody in the scene of The Last Supper begins to kind of frolic, very orgiastic.
I don't mean to nitpick, it's amazing to me that Jonathan can be so wrong on his broad conceptual point and also miss all of the details that are literally right in front of his face.
In a very disturbing manner, made even more disturbing by the fact that in the group was what seemed to be a prepubescent young girl who then gets taken by one of the men, in his arms, kind of in a dance move as all these other people are starting to kind of frolic and caress each other and rub up against each other. And so the first thing we have to dispel is, this is actually one of the funniest things about this event, is all these people and a lot of Christians going online saying, it's actually not the Last Supper. It's the Feast of Dionysus. Why are all the Christians getting so annoyed? And why are the Christians getting so mad? I am educated. I understand that this is the Feast of Dionysus. It's like the capacity of people to easily accept gaslighting is hilarious. It's like, are we back in COVID once again? Is that what's going on? Or, I guess so. I guess it doesn't take much. People don't learn their lesson. The scene is clearly referencing the Last Supper. The name of the tableau was a wordplay in French, which was La Seine. I forget how exactly it goes. It's something like La Seine de la Seine à Paris sur la Seine, which means, you can't really translate it in French, there's a wordplay in it, which basically translated into English, it means the scene of the Last Supper on the Seine River. Because in French, one of the words for the Last Supper is La Seine. And so La Seine de la Seine sur la Seine, right? And so the name of the tableau was referencing the Last Supper. The head of the event.
Just the Last Supper? See, this is what I don't understand. Like, Jonathan speaks French, so all of this information is readily available to him, even more than it is to me. A simple Google search on the Seine River will show that it is the personification or the perceived personification of a goddess, Sequana, a Celtic deity that was in Roman times synchronized into civil society, Roman society, as a daughter of Bacchus, Dionysus. It's like Jonathan is completely content to just peel back one layer of meaning on art, and this guy calls himself an artist. How does he not understand that art is multidimensional? That you can't just take one reading on it? Imagine if anybody approached the Bible the way that he is approaching this artistic ceremony. And it is a ceremony. Let's not forget, what is the forum? The Olympics. What's the birthplace of the Olympics? Could it be related somehow to Olympus? Olympus, where Dionysus, a featured, if not transcendent deity. And by transcendent, I mean Dionysus rules us presently. If you study Greek mythology, you will see that there is a succession from Uranos to Kronos to Zeus to Dionysus. If there were Greek pagans running around today, they would be worshiping Dionysus as the ruler of Mount Olympus, not Zeus. So why can the Olympics not celebrate that? Because there's Christian imagery wrapped up in it, you idiot. Where did that imagery come from?
said that he was referencing the Last Supper. The main person in the middle, the DJ, the kind of fat lesbian DJ that was in the center, she posted on Instagram saying that it was the new gay testament, right? And that this is what they were doing. She deleted, of course, the post later and changed it by saying, no, it is Dionysus. And so first of all, clearly it was referencing Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. But
can it not be both? Can it not be both? You believe in a God, Jesus Christ, who is simultaneously the Son of God and the Son of Man, who is simultaneously fully human and fully divine. Can this whole pageantry and ceremony not be a reference both to Dionysus and to Jesus? Now you might say, well, that's just heresy then if they're relating Dionysus to Jesus. Is it? Is it heresy to be conflating two gods who represent wine and bodily self-sacrifice for the good of their progenitors? No. Where did Jesus' inspiration for the Last Supper come from, Jonathan Pageau?
This is the thing, is that you have to just understand what it's about. Is that they're saying, no, what we want to do is we're emphasizing openness, we're emphasizing diversity, we're emphasizing inclusion. And that's exactly what they're doing. Now the problem...
Okay, forget, you don't know apparently. Jesus did not take his disciples to the upper room on a whim. It was based not only on Judaic observances, but pretty damn clearly, especially given the ties that later Christianity would make to the cult of Mithras. It was based on Mithraic traditions. What the Mithraic observers did underground in catacombs, love feasts, eating sacramental bread emblazoned with crosses, and drinking ceremonial wine, Jesus did in the upper room. It's the exact match in terms of symbolism, Jonathan. So how can you not know this? Are you ignorant of the fact that Mithras was another solar deity? A son of God, a son of the sun god, who was given to humanity on the winter solstice, December 25th. Like, are you just ignorant that Jesus didn't spring out of the fucking ground? Even look at the miracles that Jesus performed, spitting in people's eyes, laying hands to raise from the dead. These were common magical practices. How can you understand that we exist in a context and that all of these LGBT references are hearkening back to Christianity, but not understand that Christianity in its founding hearkened back to even older traditions? That's obviously true with what you believe with Judaism, right? Christianity didn't spring out of nowhere. It was based very practically and ceremoniously on the foundation of the Jewish temple. That's not all it was based on. That's not all it was based on. And it is so ironic that Christians of Jonathan's ilk, who want nothing but to be right, who don't care about saving souls, who don't care about saving society, who don't care about honoring and worshiping the one true God, they only care about fighting this stupid fucking culture war because they harp on these divisions and they want to make it so blasé to engage with people who are clearly expressing and suffering and loving themselves and the world through the creation of art. Like, Jonathan is an artist and he can't even engage with this honestly and seriously.
There's nothing wrong with diversity, and there's nothing wrong with inclusion. We mentioned this several times. It's necessary for a society to exist to have diversity and inclusion. But societies do not celebrate diversity.
How can you not celebrate something that is necessary to your very founding? Like, do you think we are not going to celebrate the diversity of creation once Jesus finally comes back and establishes the new kingdom? I am a Christian, but I am not ignorant of the influences that Christianity drew from in order to found itself, in order to become the focal point of all in history and time and space. In part because I have listened to the very sources that you have prescribed, Jonathan. I've spent the past however many years, 5, 6, 7 years, listening to your work and following up with the people that you recommended I listened to. And they are so not ignorant of any of these things. They understand that there were religious traditions going back all the way to pre-Moses times, pre-Abrahamic times that have been carried through and perhaps are even being practiced now in the world today, including Bacchic revelry. How can you participate in Carnival?
The only way to celebrate diversity is by carnival. The only way to celebrate diversity is by turning unity upside down, by emphasizing the fringe, the margin, and the imagery of the carnival. Now, the imagery of the carnival...
Much like how Christ turned the order of the world upside down, it's almost like carnival is a perfect Christian metaphor, and that's why Christians adopted it from Bacchus, from Dionysus.
goes even further than the imagery of the carnival. We have carnivals in the West. Of course, we have Halloween and Feast of Fools. We have Mardi Gras. We have all these traditions of carnival in the West.
All these traditions that have been curbed and adopted from other religious traditions. How can you laud a Christianity which takes inspiration from and outright steals gods and idols into its own system of classification and subjugation, and not respect or at least understand when the reverse is done to Christianity? Nothing about this ceremony was defacing to the spirit or person of Jesus Christ. In fact, it was an opportunity for engagement.
Which are moments of inversion and
you squallered it.
Scandal and chaos, which is usually then followed by some kind of return to normalcy. Either it's the fast in Christianity, whether it's Lent or different ways of doing it, but it usually moves into return to normalcy. And these festivals
what Jonathan is describing is a polar shift. Nietzsche would have described this as the difference between the Apollonian and the Dionysiac, whatever the fuck, who cares? There are two spirits at work in every single society: order and the transcendence of order. And what we are currently experiencing on a global scale, because culture is now global, what we are experiencing is the reversal of the curse of Babel. And that is leading to a whole new realm of chaotic possibilities. The world has language translation on a basic and individual level for every single culture of note. That is insane. And it is leading to the upset of all of the previously established orders that were based on the segregation of language. We are seeing a return to a global logos, Jonathan. And you take this as some kind of demonic counterforce? No. This is the rebirth that Christianity has always brought with it. It's always been Dionysus leading. Dionysus is the face of Christ, and Apollo is his back. And why can you not just put it in those terms? Why can you not see that and embrace the artistic expression here and expound upon it symbolically?
Are important, and they're part of the yearly cycle, the idea of kind of showing the chaos or showing the inversion as a limit of order. But that is the only way to celebrate diversity. And so this is why there's an absolute coherence in everything about this imagery. The rainbow flag, where it's multiplicity of color, the rainbow as an...
Like Jonathan admits, that's the only way to celebrate diversity is to accept it and cherish the reversal of fortunes that come with that chaotic upheaval. And then he wants to put himself totally on the side of one aspect of it. He wants to admit that diversity is an endemic part of creation, that we could not be unified in sameness, even if we wanted to, because humans are necessarily diverse. It's the whole point of having more than one. Would he deny the creation of Eve in the garden? Yes. He is saying there should only be one side. Only his side is correct. And the fact that he can say that while embracing avowed or at least ignorant atheists like Jordan Peterson is completely mind-blowing. How can you hug and cherish and laud the words of someone who has never even expressed a love for Christ, and yet you scorn the Christians who are accepting of what was an obvious symbolic representation of Christ? Why are you not celebrating that? On the world stage, Christ is being honored because you don't see it as honor because you're so narrow-minded.
An image of multiplicity, not unity. The image of the drag queen as ambiguity, as a man who's dressed as a woman but also has a beard and is showing their ambiguity. All of this was there obviously in the ceremony, but it is part of the culture. And so there's nothing hidden about it, and it's also, what I'm saying is not a gloss on top of what's going on. This is the discourse of the people engaged in this themselves. There's a pastor in the United States, a Methodist pastor who does his sermons in drag, and he says it clearly. In his speeches, in his sermons, he says that
the best ways to enact systemic change is through joy and carnival. Drag is carnival, it is over the top, it is loud, it is joyous, it is laugh-filled, and it is in moments where people on the margins are handed just a little bit of power, and when they hold on to that power for longer than it was intended, things happen.
Drag is carnival, and carnival is a manner to bring about change, to bring about transformation. Now, what is the transformation that is happening? The transformation that is happening is the dissolution of normal identities in order to reconstitute them at higher levels. You can understand it as a revolutionary trope. We want to destroy identities in order to reconstitute them into a new identity. What is this new identity? It's a transhuman identity. It's a post-human identity. It is a universalist image where all the distinctions kind of disappear into a kind of chaotic, amorphous being. And this is what was happening in the event. Now,
not just in the event. This isn't some change that is being forced upon us from other humans. Read your effing Bible. Read the Bible. There is no man or woman. There is no Christian or Jew. There's only one in Christ Jesus. So if all of our differences are being wiped away by this movement, does that not seem Christian to you, Jonathan Pageau? Read your Bible, bro. You are fighting against the imposition of biblical teaching. Do you not believe in biblical teaching? And you might say, oh, Corey, obviously, trans people would not be accepted by God, then why does Christ exhort us to castrate ourselves? Why does Christ say it'd be better if we could be eunuchs? I know the trans identity is not one-to-one identifiable with a eunuch. I'm not even saying that everything that is happening with the trans ideological movement is correct, but it is harkening back. It is the revivification of a spirit that was present and effusive and exhorted by Christ himself. Should we not give it a little bit of thought? Can we really say for sure that trans is evil? No, obviously not. Trans is biblical.
A good way to do that is to do it exactly the way that they did, because the Last Supper is an image of the cohesion of the West for the past 2,000 years. It is the way in which it is one of the central images of how the West communes together, brings multiplicity into one, into the holy meal that is the center of the church, that is the center of the community, that is the center of the Western nations, and has been now for millennia. And so the best way to undo that in order to bring about a new identity is, of course, to undo communion.
I mean, as a Christian, I just categorically disagree with this. The center image of Western society has been and always will be the cross of Christ. Constantine didn't see the Last Supper emblazoned in the sky on the founding of the Byzantine Empire. He saw the cross. The cross, as one of your favorite saints, St. Maximus the Confessor, says, is the eternal creation of the world. It is still happening. How do you get your own symbology wrong? Because you're so twisted up in knots. You want them to be the arch nemesis so bad, Jonathan. Wake the fuck up. People are not the enemy. Spirits, principalities, powers are the enemy. All the individuals that you rail against here are equally trapped in subservience to an evil power. The same as you and me. So why? Why are you singling them out? Why are you not understanding and helping to represent their art in higher language? Because you want to subjugate them. You want to dominate them. You want to wipe them out because you don't understand them or the references Jesus makes to their existence.
Mock the things that are sacred. And, and it's not like this is the first time this happens. The entire kind of drive, like one of the drives of the drag queen and a lot of the rainbow stuff is, of course, to replace the sacred with a new sacred, which is the sacred of ambiguity, a sacred of multiplicity, a sacred of difference. And these are all things that the people involved in these events and in this way of thinking are saying that they're doing themselves. So we have to.
It's not that this movement is doing that out of nothing. Technology is pushing us towards this point. Technology is bringing down the barriers between the sexes. And technology is something that you yourself say is represented by the garment of skin that God gives us in the Garden of Eden. So if technology is pushing us to the point of destroying every gender difference, just as it pushes us to the point of having the ability to kill babies, making abortion a valid societal issue, technology is pushing us through these barriers, Jonathan. And if technology was a gift from God, then clearly that pushing process is divinely driven, right? Like, wrestle with the actual trans ideology, not their existence. Question what it should mean to be a trans person. In ancient Greece, these people would have been venerated. Trans individuals would have been made priests and priestesses. Why can they not be brought into the church in the same capacity? Why must they be mocked? Like, just look at the progression of history. Jonathan, you're on the losing side here. You are to the trans what the evangelicals were to the gays 20 years ago. See the writing on the wall, dude. People are dealing with this issue not out of some kind of dark, inhuman force. People are dealing with this issue because God has put it in their hearts to struggle with it, and because God has put it in our times to deal with it. We have the scientific and material resources necessary to finally struggle with what it means for Adam and Eve to be split in two, and you want to just wipe all that away, like you're arguing against the progression of technology. The progress of society, the march towards the city of God. That is what you are arguing against here, Jonathan. And I have tried to put it so strongly in your terms so that you would see that.
Just be aware that that's what's going on. Now, I do believe that it is destructive. Like, it is really in some.
I don't say this to destroy you. I'm trying to get you to change materially how you are approaching these issues so you don't get trampled the same way all those closeted evangelicals were. What closet are you in that is forcing you into this dichotomy, Jonathan?
Some ways undermining, right? Literally inverting, twisting. They use the word queering. It's queering Christianity in order to bring it into this new vision of reality. And so a good way to do it.
Just like Christianity was a queering of Judaism. What about Christianity of the past 100 or 200 years has been so great exactly that we don't want to mix it up? Is it the Catholic pedophilia? Is it the Greek Orthodox inefficacy? Is it the total lack of a Orthodox presence within America that you love? Is that what you love, Jonathan? No, obviously not. We want more people in church, not less, but church attendance is on an ever-growing decline. Even with the fall of these new atheistic thought leaders, that's not changing, and it won't change until churches wake up and realize that people are not logs. Stop preaching to us and start living with us, not in the false evangelical way of showing up on Sundays and then never thinking or speaking of these people again, but by stepping into individuals' lives, taking seriously the issues that they take seriously and growing alongside them.
The Last Supper, and then replace it with an orgy. Replace it with a Bacchanalian festival, because it's not like there aren't certain analogies that you can make between the image of the feast, for example, the banquets of Dionysus and the Holy Communion. There are certain types of analogies that are there. Of course, in Christianity, it is in some ways a kind of bringing in of multiplicity into one. There is an aspect of the scandal in communion that I mentioned before, which is this idea of eating the body of the God, but it is sublimated, right? It's transformed into a vector of unity where all things are kind of collected together. Now, a good way to subvert.
You mean a vector of unity where gender differences are erased, where social constructs like what a man can dress like, whether or not a man can wear a dress, are completely disestablished? He's talking against himself. He's self-contradicting because his point has no point. He is running in loops whose only purpose is to exclude anyone that does not fit inside his nice little view of what reality should be. God bless. Christ isn't just the God of your little box, Jonathan. Christ is the God of all creation.
These kind of Dionysian party instead of a true communion, and this presenting of the god Dionysus as the meal that we will enjoy in order to celebrate our diversity. Now remember that in the stories of Bacchus and in the stories of Dionysus, there is this image, right? We see it in the Bacchae of the sparagmos, right? This idea of the ripping apart of the character, right? The Bacchic celebrants that take the person and rip them into pieces, right? And that's what is being celebrated. I don't know what to tell you. That is what is.
Why was that celebrated, Jonathan? Because Dionysus, in the persona of Zagreus, was first torn apart himself. You present it here as some kind of evil plan, like, oh, look, what's going to happen to you if you join this revelry? They're going to tear you apart. I mean, you're not necessarily wrong, but you're not seeing the deeper connection. It's not just that Jesus and Dionysus have these little moments of similarities. It's that they dovetail almost perfectly, because Dionysus is a part of Jesus, because Jesus created all the gods, or was the vector through which all the gods were created through. So of course, he left his mark on them. Of course, they are identifiable as him. And Dionysus is perhaps the supreme example of that connection. Both the gods of wine, both sacrificed for the formation of creation. When Zagreus was torn apart by the Titans, Zeus smote them with lightning, and from the ashes of that sacrifice, a god, a father sacrificing his son to the titanic forces of the world. That reminds you of anything? And that Dionysus' followers will be called to reenact that sacrifice. Almost like Jesus telling us to pick up our cross and follow him, right? Like, it's pretty obvious if you study any of Greek history, which is becoming more and more apparent, by the way. Like, it's so funny that Christians worked for centuries to destroy all the pagan temples and to destroy all the libraries and to destroy all the ritual and ceremony and knowledge of the gods, and then come and say like, oh, hey, you guys are stealing our stuff. Oh, I'm offended. It's like, you idiots. You don't know your own history. You are offended by references to your own creation. Okay, then uncreate yourselves, you stupid pieces of shit.
But is being celebrated in this thing because it is a celebration of diversity. It is a celebration of multiplicity and of inclusion, where that it is the opposite of communion, but it's so much the opposite that there is a manner in which you can see that they're related.
It's not the opposite. It's the mirror. It's the exact same thing being represented. It's the opposite in a way that the Ouroboros is the opposite. The tail is the opposite of the head. They are joined. They are what feeds. One feeds the other. The symbol itself would not exist if it wasn't for that circularity, Jonathan. How do you not understand this?
Culture of the Bacchanalia, which is trying to come back, which is being reinstated in the image. And so it's hilarious.
Trying to come back through what? Trying to come back through what? Through divine providence. You mother effer.
Watch Christians say, oh, it's not the Last Supper. It's just the Bacchanalia. It's just basically a cannibalistic image and an orgy that is being presented to us with a hint of pedophilia. And people are saying, oh, why are you getting
Like, that's so disgusting. How old was Mary when God knocked her up, Jonathan? You want to try and divorce your own Christian heritage? How old were the disciples? Which was more accurate to the age of the disciples? Da Vinci's portrayal or that French portrayal? Do a little reading. I think you'll find that Mary herself was almost a prepubescent girl. Probably right on the edge of her adolescence there, huh, Jonathan? Maybe it was just a more accurate representation of what you say you believe, huh? Why is that bad? Accurate representation of what you say is the divine truth. Are you ashamed of the history of your own beliefs?
Offended that this is the image that is being represented as, one of the images that's being represented to inaugurate an international celebration of excellence in sports,
Which is based on Olympic principles.
and the answer is, we are so now become so jaded and so used to seeing this kind of insanity that we just see it and we watch it. And a lot of people maybe aren't aware of what the guy was singing. And what he was singing basically about inclusion and about, removing all our differences and seeing each other like we're all naked. And we have to celebrate each other like we're all naked. And he kept repeating naked and naked. And then the music became like very white bedroom music. And everybody started to rub themselves against each other in the background. And then you have these Christians going, I'm an educated person. I'm not offended by a reference to Dionysus in the Olympics. My goodness, is that really where we are? Like, is that really?
What is there to be offended about? What should we do? Should we have prohibited them from doing that, Jonathan? Should we get rid of all the references to Dionysus throughout history because your little brain can't handle them? No, fuck you to all the Christians out there who say that they are honoring God by not delving into the symbology that is represented right in front of them. And shame you most of all for setting yourself up as a teacher of symbology and then completely ignoring the history of these symbols.
And so, but that is where we are. And that is what is happening. And therefore, because that the whole image was clearly sexual, was clearly orgiastic in its references, and is a celebration of diversity. If you look at what happened right after that part of the section, which is wild. I don't know if they do this on purpose, or if it's just accidental, but then the naked Dionysus, he gives it off to the next show, which is called Darkness. And then there's this dance, kind of frenetic dance. It's a continuation of the other dances that were there before, but it's called Darkness. And that's the next dance. And then we cut straight into Imagine by John Lennon. It's like, if you want to know what's going on, it's just pretty clear what's going on. Imagine there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no difference, and we're all together as one in a big bacchanalian orgiastic feast. And that's what was being referenced. And and how can I say this? It's like we're so far down the line that although the people then gaslight and lie and say, no, that's not what's referenced, but that is what's referenced. And they know that's what's referenced because that's really what they really believe, that is a good thing. If we could all just, we could all just let go of our differences and all be one in a big party, then that is an image of a transcendent unity. And so
how is that not an image of transcendent unity? Like, it's the exact thing that is described in this Bible verse. Do you blame these people for reading and trying to emulate the Bible? Like, maybe we just all celebrate together as children of God, huh? Why can you not do that, Jonathan? Like, why does your specific representation of Christianity have to dominate the cultural perspective when it is clearly so shallow and vapid that it can't even recognize its own historical ancestry? It's pathetic.
And so what we're seeing is the return of Dionysus, and it makes sense because that is what Dionysus is. It is the extreme of the natural world.
Dionysus is actually Antichrist. Dionysus, in his ties to Sol Invictus and Bacchus and Pan, is the spirit of Antichrist. And if you read Revelations, Jonathan, I think you'll find that Antichrist is inextricably wound up with Christ, not as antagonists, but as ones who represent the other when the other is missing. Do you see Jesus walking around the world? Do you see the Son of God physically with us? I don't. He's here in spirit, obviously. If Christ is only here in spirit, why should Dionysus not be with us in body? And as you know, gods are embodied by their attributes. So why should we not embody carnival and ecstasy and madness? It's happening already, whether you want it to or not. People are going crazy because technology is driving out all of these social norms and conventions that we have based our social progress on for the past 2,000 years. We are transitioning. We are going through a polar shift from the Apollonian to the Dionysian, and clinging on to Apollo will only get you burned up in the face of that. Abandon your preconceived notions. Dig into the actual history that technology is revealing to us. We are being shown. We are reclaiming the lost practices, the lost beliefs, the lost symbols of the ancient faiths that gave birth to the possibility and eventual person of Christ himself. That is a gift and a blessing beyond anything that your fear-based mentality can throw against it. Be afraid all you want, Jonathan. It is making you blind.
World. We're watching civilization be undone. We're watching, and it's not like the Dionysian or the kind of ecstatic, frenetic.
What civilization exactly? The civilization that we have in America, which is becoming more and more apparent, was always some kind of false pseudo-democracy, where they assassinate our presidents and they ignore the people's votes, and all the while they shove down war and famine and pestilence upon us. Is that the society that we should be clinging to? No, we need to look further. We need to, in ecstatic madness, imagine a better world. Imagine heaven. It's easy if you try, right? A place of no war and murder and hurt. where suffering is for our edification and not our destruction. Like, you are so wrapped up in the 1960s John Lennon religious antagonism that you cannot even bring in what obviously is a song that connects with millions, if not billions, of people worldwide and co-opt it for your vision of Christ. Your Christ is so weak that can only exclude. My Christ is so great, he can beget, he can adopt. You think you're not going to see Dionysus in heaven? Idiot.
Of the world isn't integrated into Christianity. It actually is. And it is in some ways integrated into the Last Supper. There is a Dionysian element to the Last Supper. We can't deny that. But the reason why it actually holds society together is
He wants to deny it. He can't, but he wants to. Stupid fucker.
it's not just that, right? Communion brings together the kind of ecstatic Dionysian excess with a reasonable communion in holy love, brings all of those extremes together into one. And so a good way to undo it as post-Christian is to tease out those parts again, is to kind of tease out all those different things. And so you'll see, right, this emphasis on, I've mentioned it in many videos, this emphasis on extreme reason and extreme order, that is image and technology and the modern state and the modern bureaucracy, which now becomes opposed to the kind of Dionysian chaotic let's say hybrid and ambiguous identity. And now these two play with each other, right? I've mentioned it. It's something like the whore sitting on the back of the beast that we see in Revelation.
It was always opposed. Name one time throughout history where order has not opposed chaos. Like,
that these two extremes kind of playing off each other. And that is, of course, what we saw during the thing. And because it was so degenerate and so decadent, then it's not surprising that other elements of the thing, which maybe are not as offensive or wouldn't have been as offensive on their own, are now interpreted in that way, and there's not much to say about the Marie Antoinette. If those have seen it, there was one scene with a heavy metal band with Marie Antoinette with her head cut off, holding her head in her hand, and then her hand and her head saying "All will be well" as some heavy metal band starts to play, and then there's like these explosions of blood, out onto the field, and it's like, yeah, that's it. And it's interesting because
what's it? Is that a scary image for you, Jonathan? You who routinely depict saints in the throes of unbelievable torture and agony? Why should the French not look upon the desecration, or at least the corpses of their past? It's sad.
Head of the one who orchestrated it, he said, it's the Republican values. It's the values of the Republic. It's the values of the revolution. And the answer is, my reaction to that is that, yeah, that's what it is. Hopefully my people will start to understand that is what all of the revolution leads to, is this type of kind of chaos and madness. And so there are many other images people pointed to. Of course, one of the strange images was this kind of image of the torchbearer on a horse kind of riding on the water with wings behind him, and he has this hood. He looks kind of like a strange Grim Reaper figure.
Or a Pegasus, you fucking moron. Like, has he not seen Disney's Hercules?
Is that on purpose? Is that what it is? I don't know. At this point, anything is possible. But also, we shouldn't attribute too much intent to these people. They are in some ways, many of them are in some ways unconscious vehicles for things that they don't totally understand their part in. We have to be careful in thinking that this is some completely planned thing. And it's mostly people aligning themselves with certain virtues, certain vices, and certain values, let's say, and then those playing themselves out in different ways. And that seems to be the case of what we saw. But what I hope is that for most people, people can just wake up and realize that that's happening, and that the fact that it's been happening in our culture now for a few generations, maybe since the 60s actually, that all of this is happening, and that this kind of inverted, upside down, subversive, and and a lot of people are branding the word satanic around, and I think that it's okay to use that word if we kind of understand it. On the one hand, you have the Satanists who say, "Oh, we're just being ironic. We're just being cynical. We don't really believe in Satan. We don't really believe in the devil. All of this is just a play, right? It's all irony and joking." And the answer is, yeah, we know that's what it is. And that's what part of the problem is, that if you celebrate the irony, if you celebrate the upside down, if in an event that is there to kind of bring nations together and celebrate excellence in humans, and everything about your celebration is ironic and mocking and degenerate, it's like, yeah, that is Satanism. That's what it is. I'm fine with believing and thinking that people aren't sincere in their Satanism, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about not being sincere and being dismissive and querying and turning things upside down and making fun of them and mocking them. And, that's where we are. But at some point that will run out. And what is at the same time being installed are new taboos and new systems of control and, new moral taboos, like I said. And so we have to remain attentive and not be distracted, by the little blips of this. We need to look at the long arc and see what is happening. And attach ourselves to that which is important, to the things that actually do unify us, to the virtues that we have in common, to the stories that we have in common. And as Christians, when you see this and you notice that they're mocking the story of Christ, and that they're mocking the image not only of Christ but of the center of Western unity for the past, that was the center of unity of the Western world for the past few millennia, which is the Holy Eucharist, which is communion, then we have to attach ourselves even more to that unity and understand that inversion and mocking is empty, and it will run out, and the true seed, the things that are true and that are good and that are beautiful, they will win in the end. But it's up to us to foster them and to make them the priority in our lives. It's a lot easier to get offended at something like this and to get annoyed than it is to actually foster those things that are important and valuable for the future of our children and for whatever future our civilizations have. And so hopefully this was helpful to help you understand what is going on. And hopefully, I would say, don't freak out. This has been going on for a while. This is par for the course. And I just have to warn you, things are going to get crazier. 2024 is not over yet, folks. You haven't seen peak crazy. I warned you at the outset that 2024 is going to be mad with the Trump shooting and everything that's happening in the United States. And this, of course, but it's not over. So,
wow, what a prophet. I just want to let Jonathan go on there to see if he eventually redeemed himself, but he didn't. I will extend the same courtesy to him that he extended to those he opposes or believes he opposes. Don't attribute too much of this to intentionality. Jonathan is not himself a bad person. He is just acting within the same spirit of division and self-stupefaction that has been affecting the church in North America for the past 30, 40, 50 years. A stupefaction which says, trust your own aesthetic ideals more than that of the Lord Creator God. An aestheticism that says, do whatever makes you comfortable. Live in your nice little house, your nice little home, have your nice little family, and just justify it however you need to. Adopt any system of beliefs that allows you to feel like you are morally superior to those that you do not recognize as children of God. I'm not saying that Jonathan believes all those things implicitly. I am saying that those are the consequences of the beliefs that he is shallowly espousing here. When he is showing you images of Marie Antoinette and walls of ribbons that are meant to symbolize blood, perhaps even the blood of Christ bathing the world, like, could you not have that interpretation of it? He is trying to create a subconscious revulsion. You know, I watched my mom in particular spend all of Obama's presidency calling him the Antichrist. And then when he didn't do anything in line with her conception of who the Antichrist was, she never backed down. She never came to Jesus about it. She never reckoned with her worldview's inability to conceptualize events. So Jonathan, I do give you kudos for recognizing that the world is going to get crazier and it's going to spiral outside of your perception and your ability to understand how what is happening in the world is good and necessary and true and according to the plans of God himself, because God is omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient, and nothing that happens can happen outside of his grace and glory and to his grace and glory. But I don't forgive you for refusing to reckon. Like, you have to be self-reflective here, Jonathan, or it's your own downfall. Like, your life is going to get crazier. Your life is going to spiral out of control. What you prophesy onto others is what is eventually prophesied onto you. So God bless. I will continue to watch and learn from Jonathan's videos. I have no doubt, but man, if you are a Christian, I do not see how you can believe anything other than that the world is exactly as God meant it to be, and that the ultimate destination of every true and faithful believer in God's plans and in God's creation, the first and foremost of which is Jesus Christ, every person who believes in Jesus Christ, and therefore the whole outflow of God's creation will be in heaven, and therefore already is in heaven in some sense, because nothing can frustrate that purpose. The destiny of every believer is perfect existence, and therefore every believer is already existing perfectly. I am a Christian, and I am in heaven. Everything that happens in my life and in my world is perfect, exactly as God ordained it, not just for my glory and my benefit, worm that I am, but God lifts me up so that I can lift up Christ. That's what I think. And I think that's what every Satanist believes as well, because Satan is the ruler of this world as decreed by God, and we are to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, unto Satan what is Satan's. That's all biblical, bro. God bless. Jonathan Pageau is setting himself up in a dichotomy between good and evil, and he can't help it. Listen to him talk about COVID. Listen to him be stuck in the past 4 years. Him and all of these public figures, Jordan Peterson first amongst them, are leading us into more division. They have not taken up the lessons of the past 2 years. They are ignoring them. They don't want reconciliation with humanity. They want division. They want battle. They want war, not unification. I believe in a Christianity and in a faith that unifies, that brings together all the different elements of humanity, that is diverse as the planet and the race of man is, and women, and everything in between. God creates hermaphrodites. Obviously, hermaphrodites should exist. God creates trans people. Obviously, trans people should exist. God, I'm laughing.